The National Academy of Agricultural Research Management launched its fourth edition of AgriUdan, a food and agribusiness accelerator 4.0. It had organized a 4-day capacity building workshop at Hyderabad from 20th to 23rd December for the agribusiness startups entering into the sector. Addressing the second day workshop, Praveen Dorna, co-founder, SocioHub, had an interactive session on business and legal compliances for agri and food startups, with 10 selected startups participated in the workshop.
Yeah, there's a kind of excitement I think we should go with, and I'm a founder myself, so I can totally relate to what all of you are going through. And actually, just like how startup life is very inconsistent. Like today, I had to cover business model canvas, but given that you guys have already covered it, right? So I would be taking a different topic as well to just make sure that we do that, right? So, anyways, I'm not sure what you understood with that. That was really high flown bio, but anyways, I'll keep it simple for you in terms of what we have done, right? So I've been very entrepreneurial in nature. So in my last 12 years, I've kind of worked with everything from like the smallest startups to mid-sized companies to MNCs. I've worked in tech management, India, US. So I've been like somebody who has been an explorer. So every 1-2 years, I've been in different places, different roles. So I've kind of got the breadth of exposure. And before moving back to India, I was working in the US in startup wings of billion-dollar companies. I was building their innovation programs and scaling them globally. Doing that, did my B schooling from the US in entrepreneurship. So I learned a lot of my basics over there as well. And pretty much beyond this, right now, what I do is I do a bunch of things. One is I run my startup. It's a tech startup, very similar to like Facebook, but it's like a SaaS platform. So anybody can run their own private social network right away. Right, and beyond this, I teach. I'm a visiting professor at multiple universities. I teach at Symbiosis Pune, Claim University, Mahindra University. So I teach MBA students on lean startups. Actually, that's like a 3-credit course that I teach end to end. Beyond that, I consult startups. I'm consulting some highly funded edtech companies and all that stuff. And I also kind of work with ecosystem, because prior to this one, Startup Byte, what you have heard is we used to run a social network for startup ecosystem like LinkedIn, Facebook for India around startups. So that's how like I've been here even before. Like I've been in touch with NAM for like almost 3 to 4 years now. So folks as well, and it's a pleasure coming back again. So from my end, I'll kind of keep it super interactive. I really don't know what you guys want or where you are at. I did check out the profiles and all, but obviously like all of you are smart enough. You have gone through the process. You're building a lot of things. So just help me with what is straightforward or what needs to be dealt in more detail, right? And we can even discuss anything beyond this. It's not like this is the topic, so we have to only stick to this. Anything that you want to talk about, business models, lean startups, investments, or anything else, I'm more than happy to discuss on any of these areas, right? So having said that, I think today, I think one of the things that I really want to focus on is, money, right? Investments is something that all of us really love, right? A lot of people start with ideas and they start thinking that I have to get money. So what stage is everyone right now? Like early stage? How many of you have actually active revenues? Okay, few of you have active revenues. How many are still in like the prototyping stage? Okay, so the rest of them have a product, but they haven't yet started getting revenues. You have started revenue. So just around 3, almost like 30% of the folks here actually have revenues. Got it. So one of the common thing that you'll see is a lot of investors or investment firms would constantly reach out to you. You might be thinking that it's cool. Actually, over there as well, there are like hundreds of pitfalls that you should know about. So we'll discuss about that, right? And beyond this, like what else do you want to really discuss about investments? I mean, we'll talk about pitch decks today. I'll tell you like what are the do's and don'ts and how you can actually make your pitch deck really good. And beyond that, like what questions do you typically have around pitch decks or early stage investments? Because I think all of you would eventually go for funding in one or the other form, right? Again, getting grants and getting investments from Angel investors is like a whole different thing, right? Getting it from incubators is a different game, and with them as well. So, any questions that you have that I should keep in mind before we get started? Okay, great. The start of valuation is one. Anything else?
Except for last 12 years, I'm an investment banker.
Oh, you're an investment banker, so you know who to go to, right? After all this, I think you know the right person to go to, and I think he's more qualified to talk about this. So everyone is not as lucky as him. So he has the know-how as well as in terms of the connects. So investment banking is another way to go about it, but obviously the expectations are, you know, always there that you are much more matured. With just with concept idea stage, pre-revenue, it's very difficult to go by investment bankers and raise money, to be honest. But I think let's do it at two levels. One is we will talk about investments, but before that we will talk about how do you pitch yourself, because I think tomorrow all of you will actually go out and, you know, make your presentations and all, right? So most of the times, yesterday I believe all of you have done the business model canvas workshop. Day before yesterday. Okay, so can anybody help me with value proposition? What is the value proposition? Yes, so if you're talking about an iPhone, right, how do you call, so what do you say is the value proposition?
Premiumness.
The premiumness? Okay. Anything else? Now imagine, like, you know, you are the founder of iPhone, just iPhone, and you're going to your friend or somebody else, a random stranger, and you're trying to sell iPhone, right? You're pitching your value proposition. So what would you say?
It is a newness, performance, everything.
Newness, performance, yes. I'm surprised nobody's talking about features. Technology. Okay, I'll go to a stranger and say security, and they'll buy it. No, right? Come on. You know, this is what is pitching all about, right? We are actually going and pitching. All of you are like first salesmen for your startups. So how you actually communicate? You know, frame a sentence, sell it to me, right? Or like just yes. No, absolutely. When there is everything, there's nothing, right? So this is where we are getting to pitching, right? Today, actually, what we are going to do in the next 1.5 hours is understand the art of pitching, understanding the art of building decks, because a lot of you guys might be super smart, but the problem is if you can't present yourself, then it goes for a toss, right? There are a lot of people who might do a better job than me in a lot of places, but if I can go present myself well, I will have a better shot. It's not about the best product, best revenues and all that. A lot of times it's more about how do you pitch and build up vision for even the investor, for that matter, right? Or even if you have to sell to people, that's where you get to, right? So coming back, so let's say that, you know, you're talking about newness, technology, security, you know, premiumness, XYZ. All these are statements, right? Now, if you really have to say that, so when do you, so each of these words are relevant, but when do you use which word? How do you figure that out? Just imagine this, right? So we are doing a role play exercise. You're coming and saying that, hey, Praveen, you know, newness, buy an iPhone. Technology, buy an iPhone, right? I would not be sold. Let's go deeper.
But I think that is not the way iPhones are sold anyways.
No, don't worry about iPhone. I'm just talking about example. Whatever example you want to take, we can pick it up. I'm totally cool with any example. Even if you want to share anything else. I mean, this is just like all of you know it. So I'm just kind of going with it. Or we can take any other example you want to pick up. Yeah. It's something elite and special, right? So what we're still talking about is high level, right? Now take out iPhone, put something else. Will the word still stay? That means that it's not really a value proposition. It's not a USP. Are you getting it? So one of the ways to know whether you are actually providing value or not is to replace words with, take out the brand name. So I don't know how many of you read this book around Coke versus Pepsi. I don't know how many of you know the story, but go check it out. Right? Coke was the market leader out and out, and Pepsi had to come from scratch. Right? So any of you know how Pepsi pulled it off? I think at least some of you might be aware of it. Blind test. Have you ever seen an ad? So people were so obsessed with Coke that they couldn't imagine any other drink that can replace them, right? So what Pepsi did is Pepsi did a national-wide campaign where they did a blind test. So they used to get all the avid Coke followers and say that, hey, you really love Coke, you can identify Coke for sure. Let's put a blind test. One glass is Coke, one glass is Pepsi. Right? And they used to record this. And based on that, pretty much, when people taste it, and after that they take out the covering that was on each of them, and a lot of times it was Pepsi than Coke. So people were like really stunned, and now this was made into a marketing campaign saying that, so people really started getting very inquisitive about, okay, I think maybe this tastes really different than Coke, I should try it out. And this how they did, and then they did a whole thing. Like you can read this book called Coke, the Real Story, right? So Pepsi pushed Coke so much that in 1982-83, they literally reformulated their formula of what Coke tastes, because they literally made Coke rethink that their taste is not good. Okay, so it talks about how Pepsi had that whole journey and all, and 6 months later there was a huge backlash from all the Coke fans. So again they got back, but it's a very beautiful story about how competition can play, right? So the way they played the game. So if you really like competitor stories, there are some wonderful podcasts that you guys can actually check out called Business Wars. You can check it out on you can search for it, Business Wars. It talks about every company, how Adidas and Nike competed, how Disney and their competitors, how Netflix and each of their competitors. So each company, they tell you the total story right from the starting days, how they came, how they played the game and all this stuff. Very beautiful set of podcasts that I would recommend if you want to know how competition can play with each other, right? So coming back, what we are talking today is more in terms of a lot of you do pitching at a very high level, right? Because you make a lot of what we call as assumptions. All of you think that the other person knows it, right? Now, even I'm talking about iPhone, I say that, hey, it's a premium phone. But is it like really something that they would go crazy about? No, right? When you watch a movie, there is a trailer and there's a movie, right? Unless the trailer is good enough, you would not go watch the movie. So here what's happening is your value proposition is a trailer, right? Now, if I come to you, let's say you are going out to a place where it has like low light conditions. If I come and say, hey, I have something for you that can help you take pictures in really low light conditions. Now, is that solving a clear-cut value for you, a problem for you? And this is where a lot of times what happens is we end up focusing on features rather than value, right? And we are keeping even the value at high level that you are literally replaceable by anybody else. Because if any other bigger company can give the same value, why should they look at a smaller company? Except for the pricing, right? But that is not the point, right? A lot of smaller companies are actually providing differentiated value, and if you're just competing on the pricing, you're just killing yourself in the process, right? So this is where if you can actually understand how to pitch yourself, how to position yourself, that really will make a huge difference, right? In terms of how you're looking at it. Hope this is helping you. Because a lot of times what happens is whenever I talk about, hey, how do you pitch yourself, they start getting into explaining their product, their features. I mean, I'm sure a lot of what you do, if I actually start asking in the right way, with the right set of questions, you'll say, hey, we are solving it with this feature. We have this cool feature that will help this, X, Y, Z. But actually, that is not what it is. At the end of the day, value proposition is like this, right? If I tell you this, like, give me 1 lakh rupees, I'll make it 10 lakhs in next 3 months. Okay, what would be the next question all of you would ask me?
How?
Absolutely, right? Next question is how. And there's the question you should get when each of you put your value proposition. Right? When each of you say, I'm literally driving you to be curious, right? I'm showing you a trailer. I didn't even say that I'll put that into stock market. I didn't even say I'll put that into real estate. I didn't even say that I'll use that to fund something else and get money out of it. But I've made you curious enough to ask me, tell me more. Tell me how will you do it? And this is what each of you should actually start with. Because as startups, whenever you're pitching your company, whenever you're doing this, you're literally touching the pain point of the other person or the curiosity of other person. Because all of us, whenever we are pitching, right, we always start thinking that we are building something awesome right? But that awesomeness is only for us. It is not for most of the crowd out there, right? But you need to draw them in like a salesman, where you start saying that, hey, I'm, helping, a farmer do this, or I'm helping you do X, Y, Z. And if you want to even try it, do it in the first word, saying that, imagine you are that customer and try to pitch it. You would really start connecting the dots, saying that, I'll help you make money. I'll help you do this. There should be a clear-cut value. Now, when the how comes, right, that is when you get into the rest of the pitch, right? This is where you're drawing in your audience, making them feel like, hey, how is this person actually solving this? And that is when you start giving the movie, right? So just please remember this small part. It's not about features, right? Because I can make the same 10 lakhs in 100 ways. And similarly, just like you, there will be hundreds of other startups solving the same problem. Now, unless you draw them at a top level that you are doing something really interesting, they would not jump into the next part of it where they really curiously will listen, right? Same is with investors, because a lot of angel investors, a lot of investors out there, they typically get anything around 100 to 200 decks at least a week, right? If you look at Hyderabad Angels, Mumbai Angels, Lead Angels, right? A lot of them, they have no shortage of decks, and each of them just send deck, working very hard and thinking that they have done a great job, but unfortunately they hardly see it for like 15 seconds, right? For them, it's just another deck among hundreds of decks. So a lot of times it's not just about building decks, it's about how do you connect with them, how do you pitch to them and all that stuff. So I'm talking more in terms of when you're going and presenting. So one thing, sir, over there that I want to just convey is be focused on one word. So what is the first word in business model canvas that all of you should start with? Do you remember? Sorry, you had 9 boxes, right, in BMC. What was the first box? Customers, right? The first box in any template or any investor you go to starts with customers, okay? If anybody has told you otherwise, don't go for that. Customers, period, right? Because I'll give you a small example so that you remember it for life, right? Now, if I'm making a 10 lakhs car, if I'm targeting a customer whose average salary is like 10 lakhs per year, what kind of car would they buy? Something that costs lesser than that, right? Who would buy a car which is like 50 lakhs? Probably CEOs of companies or XYZ, right? Somebody with a high income bandwidth range, right? So your customer will define everything else on that BMC. Your customer will define everything. And even here, right, just like how Vijay sir spoke about farmers, every farmer is not the same. You need to really segment. Are you targeting small size farmers, mid size farmers? Is it by the area of crop they have? Or is it based on the type of crop they're building, based on the location, geography, right? If you don't do the segmentation, again, like, the value prop changes, right? The same value prop about iPhone that we spoke about, right? If we say that technology is cool, that is cool for a younger generation or like, somebody who's tech savvy. But if you talk to a grandmother and if you're trying to sell her, right? For her, speaking to her grandkids is of higher value proposition than the best technology or 8MP camera. So your pitch also varies based on the type of customer, right? That is a very good point that we actually brought out, because a lot of times we think that one pitch solves it all. It doesn't. One pitch is good for one segment of customer. You need to understand what pitch really works for whom, and that will really drive things for you. Okay? So I will move on. We'll again come back. We'll have a lot of discussions. I think somebody needs to be approved. So one of the things what we'll do is actually we'll talk about how do we present ourselves, right, in terms of pitch decks, because each of you have wonderful startups. I went through that and I was fascinated to see a lot of good tech buzzwords, right? Most of the times whenever we talk about agri, right, now I'm glad to see, before I haven't seen, but now I see blockchain, I see SaaS, I see like, different portfolio of companies in this class, right? So that's pretty cool. So, a lot of times, just like now we are building stories, right? Pitching is nothing but storytelling. If you wanted to buy a bike when you were a kid, right, or when you were a teenager, you tell a story to your parents, right? Saying that, hey, I'm really struggling to walk all the way, or it's taking too much time to go there. So, for that reason, I need a bike. Investments is no different. Even here, what you're doing is you're doing a storytelling to the investor, where you're saying that, hey, I'm still a startup, I'm new, There are a lot of things that are not there yet, right? And for an investor, if you ask me, any other place investment is more secure than investing into a startup, right? This is the highest risk investment, right? More than even stocks or share market for that matter. But still, why do you think investors are investing? Because for them, if they invest in 10 companies, just 1-2 companies even going like highly scalable will give them a home run, which probably other companies can't pull it off, right? So even if 6 of them fail, 2 of them are average, and 2 of them still go super big, they'll cover the money for everything and the profits that they can make. And that is how the investor's thinking is. It's not like every company would succeed, right? So from their end, right, a lot of times what we do is whenever we put these slides together, we always focus on us, right? Why are we doing that? Just do one small exercise, after this, whenever you are talking to people, you'll start realizing that just listen to yourself when you start talking. Whenever somebody's saying, hey, what is your startup? Right? We are constantly spending a lot of time trying to sell or convince till you see that smile on that other person's face that, okay, this is a cool startup. That is right. So because we are in the job of actually satisfying ourselves, we are not in the job of satisfying a lot of the other side. So a lot of times whenever we are kind of doing that, what we need to really focus on is at the end of the day, investors would not share the same passion, or people would not share the same level of time and amount of effort you spend. Nobody will take that kind of effort to really sit with you and also understand what's going on, right? Now, for them, you are like one of the n number of pitches out there, and they're just seeing if the trailer is so good that I want to schedule a follow-up appointment with each of you, right? So now, given that, right, now how do you actually do storytelling? So we are just covering in different slides, but at the end of the day, you can play around the slides the way you want. I'm just telling you the points that are important typically, or what people look at. But on a broader front, it's about how do you weave and tell the story that I'm talking about. So if you guys are good storytellers, you can do amazing presentations, right? So there are 3 types of pitches, okay? Elevator pitch or rocket pitch, a lot of times, you guys already know that. That is like pure trailer, absolutely pure trailer. When you're going and doing networking, when you're meeting people. So I said, don't try to oversell. Just keep that inquisitiveness. Say that, hey, I'm building a solution on blockchain to help farmers improve revenues, XYZ. Super short. Keep it like less than 10 words, right? Or 15 words. And really try to create that curiosity and say, hey, I want to talk to you more, right? That is like the first type of pitch. The second type of pitch is a lot of times when you eventually send your decks to these people, they send you an invite to come and share, or they send you a Zoom thing, right? So a lot of times at an investors level, there are different levels, right? First, analysts kind of reach out, like the younger bunch of folks, right? And then you have partners who are like actual investors, right? So because they get so many decks and they constantly keep a tab on the market, the partners don't get into every discussion. So most of you, whenever somebody reaches out, it's usually the analyst. So analyst's job is to check out all of you and 100 other companies and tell them that which are the ones which the partner should talk to, right? So this is what you need to know about. So don't get super excited when an analyst reaches out to you, right? Because at the end of the day, the decision maker is a partner. Analyst is just an entry point. So a lot of these analysts, remember that they're doing a job. So they're just trying to also get brownie points from their bosses, right? So they would not really be in the job. So if you are really putting very high hopes on analysts, and if they're taking a lot of your time, don't spend time with them as well. Tell them that, I'm busy, or ask them saying that, hey, can I talk to a partner, right? That is when you would actually get to, like, in just 1.5 meeting, 2 meetings max, you should get to the partners. Otherwise, ask them to see if you can schedule a meeting with a partner. You'll know the seriousness of each of the analysts, right? So that way, it's interesting that a lot of first-time entrepreneurs spend too much time with analysts. The partner never gets to know about you. Because these guys, until they feel secure and safe that your startup is worth taking, they'll never take you. And you are stuck with this person and you are not going to the real person. So always look at the profiles of what it is. Their names might sound fancy, but spend some time to understand at what level each of them are, right? So anyways, assuming that that is the second level pitch in 5 or 6 minutes, again, this should be an extended version of the trailer. You can think of it like a much concise version of this, right? And then the third would be a detailed one, right? So they are like many times they ask you to almost present for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, sometimes even 45 minutes in depth, depending on the seriousness of the investment, right? Where they really want to know in and out. For that, obviously you need to go much detail into the data and speak about that. But we are focusing more on the second part of it. And Prabir sir, if you have anything, please add, right, to whatever I have to share, because I'm sure you have a lot more experience in this space. Right. Coming to this on a much broader note, based on my experiences of working with a lot of startups or doing these decks and all. First and foremost, I think a lot of us actually focus on or should focus on is more in terms of what is the problem, right? Because see, everything in the slides is something you guys know. Let's discuss about the nitty-gritties of that, right? So each of you, when you talk about your problems, now let's do that each of you are in the role play of an investor, not in terms of a startup founder. Okay, let's talk about if each of you are an investor, what would you look at in a startup? Let's take each of the slide, right? And let's do the role play where you are invested, you are not the startup. Okay, let's get out of that. You are the startup, you are now, let's say each of you have like 10 million in your bank, and I'm a startup coming and pitching to you, right? When you see a startup pitching, what do you think? What kind of problems will excite you? Solution, novelty in the market, right? Yes. So there are a couple of things here, right? Again, checks and balances for all of you, right? I'm not sure how much it was covered in lean startups or BMCs for you, but a lot of times you mix problems and solutions. You see them as one single entity. They're not. A problem is a problem. A solution is a solution. If in lean startups, I don't know if you went through the Javelin board, but in the first round of iteration, they won't even consider solution in the process. Why is that? Why should you not think about a solution when you're validating a problem? Because all of us are very biased. Agree? A designer will think design is a way to solve it. A farmer will think his techniques are really good. A technology guy will think building an app or building a platform is the way to go. Right? A sales guy will think sales is the bottom line. So all of us by design are tuned to solve problems in the world that you have lived in. But when you do that, you're actually super biased. Because if you're a super tech savvy person, you'll think everyone will understand an app. Everyone will understand. Sometimes that farmer might just be happy with an SMS solution. The farmer might be happy just with a local mohalla offering where they just bring everyone together and solve the problem for them, right? Because there are n number of solutions for a problem. The moment you start putting solutions, right? I'll give you an example. Like it's like let's say a train is going from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. So problem is like being on the platform. Solution is like getting into the train. The moment you get into the train, what happens? It's a non-stop train from there to here. Let's say you are stuck with it for the rest of the journey, right? So a lot of times what happens is the moment you say that this is my solution, you have already stopped thinking of the problem. You are already starting to think that my app or let's say blockchain will solve this, right? If I say blockchain is a solution for solving this farmer's problem, you are ending up starting to think that that is the end game for building this, right? But if you're thinking from a problem mindset, right, or when you go through design thinking workshops and a lot of these things, they're really trying to understand people, their problems without thinking about solutions. Because solutions, trust me, if you take 10 days, 9 days, if you think about problems and validating problems, 1 day is good enough to get a solution for that. That's purely because all of you can come up with solutions. I have no doubt about it at all. But I can tell you 9 out of 10 people here will struggle to validate problems, period. I have worked with more than 1,000, 2,000 plus students in the last 3 years on lean startups. People struggle left, right, center to come up with problems and validate problems because we are so biased that you always want to solve it the moment you see something, right? You see a tap flowing, you go and shut it down. You see some problem around, you try to go fix it. The reason is we are problem solvers by nature. All entrepreneurs, most of us are really problem solvers. We want to just fix it. But that is the thing that you need to get away from. So while we're getting to this part is, problem has like multiple components. First and foremost, if you really want to appreciate building startups, start thinking about what is the real problem. Okay, so if you want to really understand the real problem, I'm sure all of you might have done some level of exercise. If I can just jump in and be a spectator, probably do one exercise of observing. How many of you have done observing your customer, like stalking, really stalking? Very few people. I'll tell you, right? All of you know this company called MyGate. MyGate, it's a community app, right? So, like the founders didn't go build MyGate. So I was talking to one of the founders the other day, and so we were asking like, how did he go about? And first 3 months, they literally went and sat with the security guard from morning till night. All the founders. Why? Because they were really trying to just understand what happens in their life. What is the level of communication skills? What does that person do? How does he verify somebody? How does he approve? How does he reject? Do they enter anything? Do they even have basic language to enter anything? They took all this information, and that's when they went and started building MyGate. Because a lot of startups solve it because you're solving for somebody that you really are not an expert about. You have a very high level idea. A lot of us are not farmers, right? We don't know their day-to-day life. What mental state are they in? What challenges do they have, right? We all think that we are like, that cool big person coming out and saying that, hey, I'm going to come and help you, right? But actually the real challenge is that we unfortunately don't understand them well enough. Okay, I might sound bad to a lot of you. Even I make the same mistakes, by the way. It's not that I'm anything special, right? But this is a common observation based on my experience, right? Nothing to offend anyone here. One of the things what I would really recommend all of you is, even if you are in the revenue stage, if you are in like advanced stages, please go spend time with your target customer. Really nail the problem. Really nail the problem. The reason why I say that is, everyone has n number of problems, but you need to understand what is the most important problem that you can. And a lot of times the beauty is they themselves don't know. As a person who is observing, you probably know it a lot better, because they are so lost that when you go and ask them, right? This is the difference in lean startups and market research. You guys might have taken market research class or sessions here, and you have taken lean startup sessions here. Do you know what is the major difference between both of the approaches? Any guesses? Both of them at the end of the day do market research, right? In a way. But what is the major difference? Right? But you can do surveys in both lean startups and market research as well, right? So you're basically, market research also is not just secondary, right? You can even send out surveys and ask people. There is one fundamental mindset or thinking difference between lean startups and market research. I'll tell you. So basically in market research, you assume everything is true by default, by design. You assume all the reports are true. You assume all the surveys are true. You assume that everything everyone is saying is true. In lean startups, it's exactly the opposite. We say that anything that even in this whole class you guys are saying, I wouldn't believe it. I would say prove it. Can we run an experiment to prove what you're saying is true? If you say that blockchain is a solution, or you say there's a problem, I'll say, hey, what experiment shall we run? And let's figure it out, right? And then you can prove or disprove to me, and then we can take it from there, right? Why I'm telling you this is, at the end of the day, a lot of times when you're looking at problems, right, it's like this example. If I ask you how many like doing non-profit, I'm sure everyone in the class would actually raise their hands. But if I go and start observing you, probably a lot of you have intent, but a lot of you might not have the action to do, right? Let's say in the next 1 year, I go observe you for 365 days. A lot of you might not even spend one single day doing non-profit. But if I ask you, everyone would say, I'm interested to do non-profit. This is the disconnect, okay? It's not anybody's mistake here, okay? The disconnect here is, at one level, your intent is good. You want to do good. You want to help people, X, Y, Z. But you don't practically have the time to do that action. Or that is not in the priority list, where you're burning your money, you're struggling with so many things, right? So this is what happens with your customers as well. They have good intent. When you go and ask a farmer saying that, oh, you have a problem, we have a good solution, will you use it? He'll say yes. Next 30 days, he'll not use it. Next 60 days, he'll not use it. You will be thinking that something is wrong with him. The problem is we haven't figured out the problem, which is like such a pain point that people will go, right? You know examples of IRCTC, right? We used to go book on platforms, right? Physically, I'm not sure how many are old enough, but anyways, right? That is one thing. The second thing is after IRCTC came, even if the site crashes 4 times, what do? We still refresh, and book. We don't actually want. So that is like, the clear problem that all of us had was so much time was being taken by going to the platform versus booking it on IRCTC. So even if it's a substandard product, even if it's not up to the mark, you would still go back to IRCTC. Same was the thing. So you can probably check out this talk by Kunal Shah, right? So he has a very good talk on this, or I can share that link with you. He talks about the delta of value that you can create, which is irreversible change, right? If your startup is actually doing irreversible change, market will start adopting it because you're giving them so much value that even if your product is average, even if it's not up to the mark, they would go pick it, right? So it's a very good thing. So coming back to this, right? When you're actually talking about problems, why we are discussing all this is, I don't want you to get into solutions. The moment you start jumping into solutions, right? You will say, I will use blockchain at any cost. I'll use an app at any cost. Even if the farmer will use it or not use it, that is my solution because I'm satisfying an investor who wants scale. Right? You might be satisfying investor, but every investment made is not a good investment. Right? Just because that guy is not any more smarter than you. They haven't spent as much time as you. So if you can't really get good investments from the right people, you are actually even screwing up your company. So a lot of you think that money from anybody is good. It's not good. You have to get money from the right people. Right? So you need to really help them understand whether they are the fit. It's not about you being the fit for them, but whether they are the right fit for you as well, vice versa, right? So it's an interview process. A lot of us think that it's only that, we are the takers and they are the givers. It's not that way. It's a mutual process. You respect them, they respect you. If it really works out, there are some amazing investors who can take you long and great places, right? So there are 2 or 3 things that I really want you to really focus on, right? Clear cut exercise 1. Each of you, after this sessions are done and all, when you go back, right, go and just spend 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, just with them, right? There is this wonderful thing in Bitspilani or like, how many of you know Shodhyatra? Shodhyatra, it's a IMA thing and then it got panned out across India and all. So Shodhyatra, what they do is, they assume that rural innovation is amazing, right? I'm not sure how many of you have actually experienced it. So there is this concept called Shodhyatra where folks from the city are taken to rural villages and you should not talk over there. Okay, you should think that they are smarter than you, right? And you should just take notes and observe. It's like a 15-day trip, right? It was so good that Bitspilani, actually the students went back and made it a course and curriculum in their thing. But Shodhyatra happens in many states. You can go and be part of it anywhere, right? So over there, right, they make notes, they figure out what innovations the rural innovators are doing, and they get it patented back to them. That is what this organization does, right? Honeybee Network. So why I'm telling you this is, when you do that exercise of going and observing and not being a preacher, you really become humble. You really start respecting them for your customers for what they genuinely are facing, right? You get that empathy. That is when the kind of solutions you build are going to be extremely, extremely good. Because a lot of times what happens is each of us are making food, but you're not feeding the hungry. You're making it look good to feed somebody else, right? If somebody is really hungry, they will eat food even if you give it from a 5-star hotel or even from a local bandi, right? The problem is we always think that that person is hungry. Maybe they're not hungry for that problem. Because if they're really hungry, trust me, any solution that you really give that is really saving their time, helping them, people would pick it up, right? So there are 2 things when you're looking at investments, right? One is first figure out what the real problem is, where you have to be the best person or the expert in that problem, saying that I really understand my customer. That will really increase your success rate. Second is, how big is the problem, right? This is where your investments would probably come into play because nobody wants to invest in small markets, small size verticals. A lot of them want to actually spend time on big markets, right? So here, what you're doing is you have to come up with like numbers, right? A lot of you might not get direct data, but I think you can take help of others. It's more of estimation. There is no right or wrong answer for this. It's more about, for your segment, how many people exist, right? Like let's say let's say, if you say that India has 1.3 billion people, out of which in this age group, maybe 400 million people are there, out of which people going to, or maybe let's say farmers are X% of that, out of which my subsegment is this, right? And people who have the paying capacity are this, right? So I'm just breaking it down and coming up with high level numbers. That is important at two levels, right? The first level where it is important is to tell somebody that there's a big enough market, right? The second thing why it is important is also for you to know how big can you become, because obviously you will not capture 100% market share, right? So Apple hardly has like 10% market share and still they have like the most valuable company out there. So it's all about not saying that I'll go 50%, 60%. Most of the investors would not take that. They'll not really believe that also if you go say that. So they look at big market size, right? So if you talk more about tech startups and all, they look at like billion and all. For agri, I think the experts out here would be better people to tell what is the kind of range, right, that they look at. So that way, look at like how big is the problem, right? How deep is the problem is the first slide, what we spoke about. Second is how big is the problem, right? And you might be thinking that, hey, if my problem is small, maybe it's not cool. That's nothing like that, right? Lot of times you can expand your markets as well, right? Even if you look at Amazon, you look at, most of the companies out of India, they didn't imagine the number of verticals that they'll get into. After they realized that they're getting to saturation in some verticals, they started introducing more product lines. They started serving adjacent markets, right? So this is how you'll eventually scale. So don't worry about that. What you need somebody listening to you is tell them that this is a real problem. We're going to solve it, and how are we going to make money out of it, right? That is the focus. So here, even if you like, you don't like, I highly recommend doing your market research and putting some numbers, because a lot of times investors start their thinking from here, where you tell where they feel that you at least understand how big is your market, what is the thing, right? So don't try to just put fancy numbers for the sake of it. Be genuine about stuff, right? Because a lot of us think that we are like super smart, but unfortunately they also see so many slides that they have data about 100 other agri companies pitching to them. So it's not like your number is the first number that they're seeing, right? So they have their own thing. And ideally, right, a lot of times quantify the pain point, right? How many people are actually struggling with this kind of thing? So first slide, I would say like, what is the problem you're solving? Because that is like a trailer for them. If they really connect to the problem, they would want to listen to your solution. Now coming to the solution part, like, the way we are looking at solution is more around, we are really talking about value proposition. We already kind of covered this, but here what you're talking about is they all think that anybody can build. Okay, if you know what the solution is, right? It's probably a matter of a bit more technology, less technology, a bit more operations or less operations, right? If money is given, on an average, most of them can build similar stuff if you get the right bunch of people together. Now, what they're really looking at is, what is your solution and why is it better than somebody else? Okay, if you can really connect the dots with the customer problem, you might actually offer the simplest of solutions than anybody else. The reason is, whenever you see complex solutions, right, they genuinely don't understand customers, because they think that every feature is important, right? It's like, me trying to sell to somebody, and I badly want to impress that person. What I'll do is I'll keep talking until I see that smile on their face saying that, okay, this person now really values me, right? But if you're a really confident person, and if you really know what you are, and if you really know what you want from them, you don't do that. You just say, hey, like, I'm looking for this, can we work? Or can we connect, right? And this is where a lot of times the best solutions are like the simplest of solutions, because your users are not so savvy as much as you are. We end up actually trying to complicate it to make it look cool, but again, you're satisfying your personal egos. You're not satisfying the customer, right? Because it's like this, right? If you have 6 months to live, what are like the 10 things that you would do? You can make a bucket list if you really know this part, right? So I don't know how many of you know this, but if you can, go check out this thing called Last Lecture. Have any of you seen that? Okay, so it's just a 1.5 hour video. Check it out. What happens is Carnegie Mellon University in the US, right? They have this tradition where every professor has to give one last lecture. If that is like the last lecture they're ever giving to the whole world, what is that lecture going to be? So it is like a very prestigious thing for each prof. to actually tell like what do they want to tell the world. So this prof who actually was telling was actually diagnosed with cancer, and he was like due for dying in next 3 to 6 months. So in fact he gave a lecture on importance of building your childhood dreams. So he puts out 10 different things that as a kid he dreamt, and by the end of that whole 1.5 hour you'll see how he achieved each one of them, and it has a climax. The talk is so beautiful with so many good learnings that it went viral. He was then invited to Oprah show. Then it was made into a New York bestseller book. Then there was a whole cancer fund raised, which raised almost $100 million, right? Just with 1.5 hour talk. So go check it out. It's a really wonderful piece of book or video. I would say see the video more than the book. You can really connect with the person. The way he pitches, the way he talks, the way he tells his learnings, right? It'll really change a lot of things for you. Why I'm telling you that is, if you look at most of the people's decision making, it happens, the decision making is top notch when you have a end game or a deadline, right? Even Steve Jobs, I don't know how many of you seen his Stanford speech, when he got to know he's dying, his decision making completely changed, right? All of us think that we live forever, and that is why you also think your startups live forever. But the moment, if you really want to be very critical about your decisions, you should always think that you are dying, right? And that is when, so yeah. So see, a lot of us, again, come back. I think we had a minor break. So a lot of us think that we live forever. When you do that, right, you don't do a lot of things that you actually wanted to do. Same as with your startup. You end up building 10 features because you are actually thinking that everything is important. But let's say you're going to die tonight. You can actually make a list and give it to me right now saying that what are the 3 most important things. You might say, I want to meet my family. I want to go do this, X, Y, Z, right? That is the level of clarity you get when you put boundaries, right? Even in yours, you should be totally ruthless about yourself and put boundaries in solving and saying that I'll not build this until I validate it, right? So this is where the solution part is coming in. Making sense? Since then, I've been very critical about myself because the basic principle that I live with is that, as if you're going to die tomorrow rather than live forever. So I try to make every day count and make every year count. It's like, every year should be a better story than the last year, right? And that is why I take so much risk. That is why you saw my profile actually being very all over the place, because I want to experience, because nobody knows, right? With COVID and all, anybody can go tomorrow, right? So you should really feel, so I ask this question in a lot of my talks, right? I say, how many of you can really die smiling right now, right? Because if you have anything unfulfilled, anything personal, not even just professional, forget professional, right? A lot of times we postpone everything thinking that there's a good future where you have X millions, you buy a car, you spend time with family, you go on a trip. So what happens is a lot of us are actually living in the future. You're not living in the present. And that would always make you feel bad beyond a point, because when it doesn't happen, or when you're actually on the deathbed, you start feeling like, I should have done this before, right? So right from my early 20s or 15 to 20, when I saw these videos, I have been very particular about this. So I was like, I have to live a life of no regrets. I've done crazy stuff, probably some of them, because sessions are being recorded, I'll not tell you, but I even went and proposed to people in the first instance, right? I have a lot of other crazy stories to share as well, right? But what I'm saying is, live your life. Don't wait for life to come to you. Live your life. Feel that power in you. Feel that thing in you. Trust me, you guys will be very satisfied, fulfilled. It's okay even if you don't build $100 million companies. You'll still be a very happy person. And when you're happy, people around you will be happy. Your customers will be happy. You can really appreciate them instead of feeling bad about them, right? So I hope now the problem and solution are clear, right? Problem, really go to the depth where a farmer and you should feel the same pinch. That is when you are actually understanding your customers. Solution, put it in a way where you are actually giving them a very good pitch in terms of why you are important. Because a lot of times, if I tell me about yourself, a lot of you might end up actually talking a lot, right? Including me. The reason is that we really want to tell everything, right? If you take Swiggy, for example, if you are seeing the pictures, how many lines do they write? Just one line, right? They can say fastest delivery. They can say you can browse a huge number of restaurants, X, Y, Z. Because a lot of times when you do the value proposition exercise, I'm not sure if this was covered again, but on YouTube, you can check out saying something called value proposition canvas. Just like how your business model canvas, the same person has built another sub course or whatever you can call it, that's called value proposition canvas. It tells about how can you get to your value proposition and how do you prioritize your value proposition. So it talks about the jobs to be done, how to prioritize and XYZ. So you can check it out, Google it, and it's a video that all of you can pretty much pick up. So when you do this, right, your value proposition should be so clear and so simple, right? Like if you say Paytm, they say I can transfer money. Cool. That's a pain point somebody has, and somebody is able to do it like without taking a bank account, right? If you take UPI, for example, I just need a phone number and I can transfer money to you. So I'm solving a real problem compared to any of the banks. Getting it? So this is where we are going to talk about it, right? So another clear value that we are going to talk about is solution is one, but benefits are many, right? So you can always say that, hey, even if you take an example, like let's say you come up with a new drone for farming and you say, hey, this can spray, this can monitor, this can track, right? This can actually even analyze something, it can send data back. Now all these are like different features for the drone startup that you're building. But at the end of the day, when you come back, you can't sell everything to somebody. They'll not give you that kind of time, right? Because you can actually sell a lot of bigger value proposition when you're in person. Because if I'm talking to you, I can see your expressions, I can sell to you. But imagine you're sending a posters to, let's say, 50,000 farmers in a village. Can you really sit for like 1 minute and talk to each of them? Not possible, right? You're sending a simple poster saying that this is going to solve this for you. If you're interested, call me on this number or sign up on this site. Now, this is where your real value proposition comes into play. And if it is not hard hitting, if it is not coming in, then your benefits are not actually meaningful for them. So this is a great way. So in lean startups, I would again further recommend, I don't know to what depth it was covered, but check out online, search for lean startups and look for validation experiments, right? There is a whole book on lean startups. If you want, I'll share a few other 4-5 books as well. What you need to do is design a lot of experiments and see how others have conducted experiments, right? Just like how Sir was mentioning about Dropbox, even Dropbox did lean startup experiments before actually getting to build their product, right? So there are different types of tests like landing page tests, marketing tests, right? Different tests exist. You need to just know about each of them and do that exercise. So whenever you're looking at benefits, right, don't write too many benefits. If you're not sure, if you want to know which benefit is important, go back to value proposition canvas, run that exercise, you and your co-founders or your team, get to some clarity, and then you really know what benefit is, what really matters, right? Next important thing, so I'm not telling it in a specific order, but you figure out how you sell your story, but you can always follow this order. This is like a standard template that I picked up. It's not like something I custom wrote, right? So next thing is, right, let's look at it from an investor, getting back to again being an investor, right? Now, first thing what you saw is about the market, right? Rest of the world, what actually happened, what is the overall problem, and what is the solution you're offering. Then the next question that will come to you as an investor is like, how many more people are doing it, right? Because if you're like just that one single person who's doing it and you're the first one and you're doing it amazingly well, then they'll feel that they have a better shot putting money into you. Now imagine you are there and 20 other people are there. What happens? It gets commoditized, right? It's like selling salt. If there's every other company selling salt, then even if you have like cool fancy stuff, they would think 100 times before investing into you. So the same comes in competition, right? So what you need to actually do is, you need to, before they ask you saying that who is your competitor, XYZ, it is good that you actually share about how you frame it and all is up to you, right? You want to show features, you want to show value, whatever it is, but tell how you're different from your competition. Because a lot of times, some of the best pitches don't shy away from putting their competitors out. Why? Why do you think so? Why do you think a lot of good startups don't shy away from putting their competitors? If I say I'm competing with Paytm, can you understand me well now? Very fast. Instead of me spending 10 minutes trying to pitch and tell that this is this, then try to visualize something and like, X, Y, Z. If I say, hey, I'm competing with Uber, Ola, 3-4 names, then you're like, oh, he's a ride sharing app. Right? Sorry. Right? So basically, this is how a lot of times when you put competitors in place, right, they start comparing you with them because they know, okay, this is a segment in which you are actually playing the game. right? So do that, and also try to tell clearly, saying that where is that value that you're offering that your competitors are not giving. And it's okay if there are areas that everything need not be a checkbox. It's about how you pick your value prop, and sometimes say that, like, DMart, right? DMart versus Reliance, if DMart goes and says that, hey, I don't sell XYZ, it's okay because it's their model, right? I'm not sure, again, go back and check out the whole case study of DMart and how they actually became a billion-dollar company, right? They have amazing fundamentals. Everyone rents out real estate. These guys own the real estate. They buy the property, right? Everyone puts a lot of variety. These guys only sell few products in each category, right? Everyone puts market prices. They negotiate at that level where they come in, right? Their average sales is around 3,000, 5,000 rupees when a customer comes in. But if you go to a supermarket, average sale is not that. So they have very clear differentiation, saying that we are not going to sell to everyone. We are going to sell to that price conscious middle class person, right? Who really wants to save money and who goes to buy grocery once in a month or twice in a month, right? Go check out DMart. It's a wonderful, again, case study to check out, because they haven't done anything different. They're also another store selling grocery. But the way they have tweaked the models, the way they have put differences in their models, that is what is the game that they played. Each of you can actually play the game and still compete with the biggest of companies if you can understand that. And that is where, depending on, again, the first word that I said, customer segment, you have to play that game. Because if you take a Ola, Uber and all, their customer segment is the whole world. You don't have to compete with all that. You have to pick a sub-segment. You have to really do an amazing job. If you say that I'm focusing on undergrad students, or let's say farmers with less than 5 acres, and I'm the best solution than any other company for farmers less than 5 acres. If you can nail it, right, a lot of investors would be ready, because you can always scale it to 5+ acres. So that way, what a lot of investors or pitchers want is, they don't expect startups to be a Google or startups to be a big company, right? They expect startup to be a startup. You're solving one problem so well that others can't compete, or it is too small for a bigger company to pick it up. They would actually come and rather buy you rather than, again, trying to build it. So that is where startups really come into play, right? So be proud of you being a startup. Don't try to be a bigger company. That is not the story. Say that I'm a startup, I'm laser focused, I'm nailing it for my customers, and I know how to grow it from there. All I need is XYZ investments, and that is the vision you show them, even if you don't build it right away, right? So that is where, put your stuff, right? And in this whole pitch, right, I want you to remember that don't lie, right? Respect your investors. You don't have to sell it to them, because if they really don't understand, maybe you're pitching it wrong, or maybe they probably are seeing as a third person and realizing that you're not up to the mark. That's okay, right? You always can take feedback from them on why they feel what's important, what's not important. But a lot of times we oversell, and when they get into something called due diligence, right, after you get your initial term sheets, right, let's say I want to put money into you. After that, what happens is we have term sheets, agreements kind of stuff that's sent, and once that is signed, you get into the due diligence process. Due diligence process, they literally go line item by line item. Everything that you told, every single finance, every single thing, they literally check every single thing that you told, and if they feel they're comfortable with it, that's when they go with it. Because what they really want is founders' trust. Not even anything else, not even your product, not even your solution, but founders' trust. Because at the end of the day, they know that you're going to pivot. They know that you're going to actually have a high chance of failure. All they want to is, they want you to be trustable enough where you'll come back and tell them the truth, right? And where they can work with you and solve that. And that is the kind of relationship you should really have with your investors. Then they'll take you a long way, support you. They'll go all the way out to help you out, right? So that is where we are getting into that. The next thing that we are going to cover is about the go-to-market strategy. So now, if your customer, problem, solution are very clear, right, your go-to-market strategy is very easy to build. A lot of times we start with this, right? You say, I want to sell to farmers. Now you figure out a go-to-market strategy, because the word that you put over there is what? Farmers. It sounds like, all of us know farmers, right? The reality is there are n number of segmentation farmers. I'll give you a small example, right? Like, let's say I want to solve a problem for all the students in India. Okay? Sounds cool? Looks like a Forbes cover story to tell, right? Now let's say I make another statement. I want to solve all the problems for people and students in Telangana. Second statement. Third statement, I want to solve the problems for students in Hyderabad. Fourth one, I want to solve the problem for students in mechanical engineering in Hyderabad. I want to solve problems for students in tier one colleges in Hyderabad. What am I actually doing? We're narrowing down, right? Can you give a solution for this, the last statement, much faster than the first one? Absolutely, right? Why? Because you have narrowing down so much that you literally know who the tier one mechanical engineering colleges are, right? All of you in the next 1 hour can just go online, make a list of all tier one engineering colleges in Hyderabad. You can come back with me. If you have that list, do any of you have doubt that you can't reach out to them? You can't sell to them? You can, right? That is your go-to market. But what we do is we say we have to hit India. When you say I have to hit India, what happens? Now we are like, there is student in tier 1 cities, tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities, right? They are like students with different income brackets, different backgrounds, different courses. So this is where it becomes like a huge challenge for you, because all of you are struggling with go to market. Because what I'm trying to get back is build small, not build big, right? That is a statement I want to iteratively repeat, because problems, I think a lot of you might be engineers, I'm assuming here, right? When there is a variable x plus y, that is easy to solve than a plus b plus c plus x plus y plus z. So what we all do is we think that we are cool and we think that we have to solve a plus b plus c plus x plus y plus z. But what you need to do as a first startup is just solve x plus y. And then add z, then add a, then add b, then add c as you grow, right? So it's not about doing all that together. This is where a lot of us actually make that fundamental mistake, and you come back and say, hey, why is my startup taking so long? Now imagine, let's say you're building a nice startup in the next 1 month. Imagine I say that I want to solve this problem. Let's say I want to solve the problem of, spraying pesticides. And I'll say I'll just want to solve it for farmers with just less than 5 acres. And let's say in 30-kilometer radius from here. Can I nail it? Can I come up with a solution super fast in 1 month? I can go to market as well. Agree? The reason is our solution is really built and we know our target customer, we know who to reach out to, who to talk to, who to pitch to, who to sell to, who to get money from, right? And that is when you can solve it. Now from that, can that 30-kilometer radius be made 60 kilometers? Absolutely. 60 can be made 90. So whenever you start small, you can always expand. But we all do the same mistake of coming from big and trying to go small. That is where your thinking gets complicated. So it's more around psychology, what I'm talking about. It's not about anything else, right? So I do a lot of problem solving and I do a lot of workshops on innovation and all that. So this is where I find most of the times people make that common mistake. All of you are very good problem solvers. The only problem is you don't scope it out. If you can actually scope it out, go back for each of your startups, pick like the smallest segment, smallest vertical you can solve, right? And trust me, each of you can actually build revenue generating. Even whoever said, we are not yet generating revenues, trust me, you can get revenues more faster than you have ever thought. That's if you can define the scope and be so targeted, right? So coming to the go-to-market, there is like plenty of management material around this, right? Market needs, XYZ, channels. So you all can read that. I will not get into all that. But typically when people are asking for go-to-market, right, they're really asking you, where are you going to sell? Who are you going to sell, right? That is what the bottom line is. Each of you can put this slide, and what I would recommend is don't make slides wordy like this, what is made here, right? Make very graphical, make it very visual, and let them hear you. If you put in too many words over there, what happens is people end up reading it, right? But if I just put a graphical statement saying that this one, then I'm covering these states, then I'm going this state, right? Then, people actually start getting it. So here, go to market, another book that I would really recommend is this book called Traction. I'm not sure how many of you have read it. Traction. It talks about 19 channels that you can exploit to get customers. Okay, it pretty much covers everything offline and online, right? So check that book out. There's something like Traction Workshop and everything that happens as well. But if you can read that book, it's amazing. It'll tell you how to pick channels, how to prioritize channels, and even those channels will keep changing as you grow. It's not like that same channel will give you unlimited return. It's only till until one stage it will give you return. After that it gets junk. You need to revisit it. So check out this book called Traction as well. That'll really help you with go to market. So if you ask me, right, go to market is not a stage to be reached. I would say actually you should always go to market. The reason I say that is that your product is never perfect, right? So there are two types of building startups, right? One type of building startup is thinking that your customer is a guest. Second type of building startup is thinking that your customer is a family member. Okay, what is the major difference? If somebody is a guest, you always think that I'll clean up my house, I'll arrange everything really well. When everything looks really good, I'll invite them into my house. But when you're talking about being a family member, they know your house day in, day out. Like how we throw out everything here, everything spread around. That means that you genuinely believe that they're your partner. They're solving with you, right? So a lot of times, even in lean startups, right, when you run experiments and all, we source people even before we build anything, right? Even Dropbox example, sir was talking about is more about they already got like 300,000 people to sign up even before they started first line of code by running a video experiment that they did to understand whether people really liked their product or wanted their product. They just did a screen recording video and explained it and put it on YouTube, and they started getting a lot of hits from people because they were already successful founders. When they went to investors, every investor rejected. They said Google Drive is there, Microsoft OneDrive is there, everything is there. Why do we need another Dropbox? So they really wanted to prove it to themselves that we are actually building something useful, right? So here, why I'm telling you this is, a lot of us always think like customers as guests. No. Think of customers as your family members. And trust me, your first 5-10 family members are really worth it, your customers, right? Because what they're doing is they're working with you. You go sit with them, right? See their life. Tell them that I'm solving a problem, but I really don't have a best solution right now, but I need your help. Right? A lot of us really feel bad in using this word, I need help. Right? Because we all think that we should give help, right? We're on snaps. But the thing is actually we need help more than anybody else because we are trying to build something for somebody, right? So at the end of the day, what I would say is go genuinely ask them saying that I haven't built the best solution, but I genuinely want to solve this problem for you. I want to work with you. Even you can do it at an idea stage. Because, when you put it out for investors and all, obviously you put a much more detailed, but I'm talking about you building your company kind of thing. You can put it anytime, right? You can, Mr. Prabir has mentioned, you can even put it at concept stage saying that I think that, my customers are this and I can find them here, here, here. So you can do that. But what I'm talking about more at an execution level as well, where you are actually knowing that. Because when you know that, right, you already have tapped into your go-to-market. You can just put the same channels of what you have done validation, right? And you can tell that I already reached out to 1,000 people in these channels and I'm getting people to respond to me. Now I'm planning to spend more money on ads, or I'm planning to reach out to more villages in the same model. So your go-to-market is automatically built in the process. Making sense? So all these things, I'm trying to even break a lot of myths that you might actually have, right? So go-to-market and all these are very fancy buzzwords and all, you should all think like school students or kids who just know basics. Trust me, all of you would be more successful that way rather than trying to really put it, because as we put more and more words, you're trying to match up to somebody's expectation, right? But one thing that all of you should realize is you're building companies. You're not building for investors. You're not building for anyone. You're building for your customer. And if you can do that, it's like, me saying that, hey, let's work together. I want to solve your problem. Tell me what problems you have. I've made some small prototype. Do you like it? What feedback? Do you want to pay for it? How much do you want to pay for it? It's not financially viable. What else do you want in this to make it financially viable? Right? I do this exercise just taking him into the room for next 1 week. I'll build a solution for him. And this is exactly what you need to do. And go to their place. You don't have to call them to your place. Go to their village, sit with the farmers, solve it for them, and do all that stuff, right? So that is where, you get to the go-to-market part. And business model is more about, I think you have covered it. It's more about how do you make money, right? So pretty much how do you make money is, I think, a lot of us think that we'll give it for free, then figure out, then make money. Bad strategy. A lot of second-time entrepreneurs don't do that. First-time entrepreneurs do that. Second-time entrepreneurs do it when first-time entrepreneurship is successful and they already have a good network of investors who are ready to put money into them, right? But everyone is not Kunal Shah, or everyone is not, all these successful founders who have that kind of capital to burn, right? So I'm talking about an average founder, right? A lot of times, if you ask for money, right, I'll say, hey, if you go to a farmer and say, will you use it? They'll say yes. Ask them, will you pay for it? A lot of them will not. Or even to make you happy, they'll say, I'll pay for it. Okay? Let's say 100 people you go to, they'll say, I'll use it. Let's say 75 of them will say, I'll pay for it. Ask them to actually put 100 rupees on the table. That 75 will suddenly go down to probably 25. Why? Just like what market research and lean startups are. Intent and reality are two different things. So what I would say is a lot of your startups, even if you like or hate it, give it for lower cost if you have to, but charge something. Right? So in my first startup that I did before this, right, we gave everything for free. So people always say like, oh, it's cool, amazing, great, right? Because they have nothing to lose. They use it, they don't use it, nobody cares. Right? When we pivoted, when we got into this, I started telling people that I'll rather shut down than give it for free. No, pay me. If you want to pay less, you don't have the money, it's okay. What do you think is worth, pay me, but pay something. All these people who asked for free were the same guys who were paying for it, because now they are valuing the solution. Now I understand that they really needed that money's worth, right? Then I started increasing pricing and they're still paying the higher price. That shows that they value that. Getting so this is what put this into this. Make it very clear. Don't put 100 business models when you make this slide. Keep it very simple, right? Because as a startup, it's not about coming with 50 different types of pricing, 3 different types. Say that, hey, I'll give this, I'll take this, right? Put like just few business models that you are. If you're not sure, test it out. Right, and one thing that I just want to cover is financial models. I think we'll be just talking in the upcoming slide also, but all of you working on ideas, please make your financial models, see the sustainability of your company, or when you're going to get profitable. A lot of times you underassume and overburn, right? So that is like something, and probably Mr. Prabir can actually help you guys if you want to really put assumptions on the financial models, right? But what I genuinely say is a lot of us don't even calculate the total cost. So, just last week, a bunch of students came to me and said, hey, I want to deliver old books, right? Like, used books. So I just asked them to put cost economics, right? Now I asked them only one small thing. Will you deliver a 50 rupees book? Right? Because now they started looking at the cost of delivery costs. They started doing this. Now they started realizing that, hey, it doesn't make unit economics. It doesn't make sense to deliver books beyond X price point. Similarly, for each of your things, burn money, but know that you're burning money with a reason. It's not like you're just burning money without knowing your unit economics. Because at the end of the day, the curves have to converge at some point of time where your profits are higher than the burn that you do, right? So think of that and put business models, keep it simple. And how much money can you make, right? This is what investors would be genuinely interested in. If I have to delete all the other slides and put one slide, this would be the slide. This is the trailer slide for everyone, right? Because if you go to an investor and say that, hey, you're putting 50 lakhs into my company, 5 years down the line, you're going to get 5 crores out of it. Then he'll value whether, oh, this is worth it, not worth it, should I put money in it or not, right? So that is where we would go about this. So this again goes back to your financial models, financial projections on how do you make money or what are your projections, and they try to understand with their understanding whether are these making sense. Here they'll ask you about assumptions. They'll say, what is the growth rate you assumed? Right? Or they'll say, what size of the market do you think you'll capture? X, Y, Z. Because if the assumptions make sense, right, then your projections will make sense for them. They'll feel very comfortable. And if this works, right, everything else works. Then, solutions, product, problem, everything comes secondary when you can actually show them that they can make money out of this business. Or if not, at least show a clear exit strategy, right? Like you can sell it to a company where they can make enough returns. You say that in 5 years, I'm going to sell this to a bigger player. I need to build this. We might not be profitable, but we might actually get sold to this. So high risk investors, especially in Silicon Valley and all, they would even pick up those stuff, right? The next thing that I want to cover quickly is around team. This is really important because most of the startups, definitely you can write it on bond paper and sign it yourself. The way you start and the way you end will not be the same. Right? That's a fundamental baseline of any startup. So what investors are actually investing in early stages, your team. They think that if I give my money to this team, can they eventually figure it out? Can they do enough pivots until they get to a successful startup, right? In the kind of money, right? And that is where your team is really important. So you can focus on multiple things. you can focus on what your accomplishments are and you can show how relevant you are, right? For example, if you're building agri startups, tell them why are you a good founder to build an agri startup. Tell them how your experience will really help solve the problem, or why are you really a good person to solve the problem, right? I'm not sure how many of you see Shark Tank, right? Yeah, you guys see, right? So check it out. It teaches a lot about pitching, right? How people pitch, and in 30 seconds, 40 seconds, they make an impact, right? I pretty much have seen 12 or 13 seasons out of 14 seasons. So, just intuitively, you'll start really realizing that how pitching should happen, right? How people are pitching, what they're using, and all. Second is, don't always bet on yourself. Always build a good advising team or mentors, right? Because if you can actually get a good bunch of mentors, it gives them a lot of credibility that you're open to listening. And at the same time, if you get really good mentors, they'll actually be that bad guy for you, or that person who would actually give you very honest feedback, saying that maybe something is working, not working, kind of thing, right? So that is where you put. Sorry, go ahead. It's not mandatory, but you should at least tell them. See, it's as simple as this, right? I'll tell you one very nice, simple formula or tactic to know all this, right? Put yourself into other side. Now imagine if you are the investor sitting on the other side and you're listening to somebody. Think about what all sales points from other end would really sell to you, right? If you don't have agri background, let's say that is like one negative thing. What other positive things are there? Have you built multiple startups? Or have you have the pedigree or XYZ to prove that you can do it? Or have you solved problems before? Right? What is your edge, right? What is that edge? You need to figure that out and tell them that I am the right person to solve. And by the way, if you believe that people have to be from the same industry, again, I'll say, that's not the right answer. A lot of innovations come from people who are not from that industry. Because what happens is people in that industry are so biased that this industry will work this way, this is how it is done, XYZ. Right? There's a wonderful quote. A fool did not know that it was impossible, so he did it. Right? A fool did not know that it was impossible, so he went and did it. Everyone else was thinking it's impossible because they were thinking that this is how it works. But this guy didn't know, so he went and tried it and it probably worked out. He came up with a solution. So most of the innovation actually happens. You'll be surprised that most of the innovation happens from people outside your industry, not in your industry. And that is why most of your competitors are not even from your industry. You'll start realizing that very soon, right? So that's the beauty of it. So don't worry about that. Focus on projecting yourself, right? Last few slides, I'm almost done, right? One is in terms of progress. This is about respecting yourself and them in terms of how have you made progress, right? Because if you can't really show progress to yourself and to your investors, right, then you're wasting your time and their time, right? So progress should not be just like I did this. Tell them a storytelling journey, right? Jan 2021, I was here. March 2021, we did till here. Or our revenues grew by this. Or we launched our first product. Then you say I acquired my 10 customers. Then I got to this revenues. Make it a story, right? Let them feel that they have seen or they're getting a feeling of how they connect with you. Because always people connect with only storytelling, right? I'm repeating that word 100 times. Storytelling is bottom line, sales, entrepreneurship. Take any industry, storytelling is bottom line. Here, if you can tell a storytelling saying that this is my whole story, right? If you have to really tell somebody, I say that, hey, in my last 12 years I've done X, Y, Z. Next 5 years I'm planning to do this. You would be sold better because I'm telling you my progress journey, right? I'm adding credibility. So please put that and focus on milestones. Focus on clear things that people can relate to. Don't give some random data, right? So just focus on that, right? Last slide that you need to really do is ask, right? When you go for the ask, what we're actually doing is very much we're trying to understand what do you want and why do you want, right? It's like how much money do you want? If you go and say, hey, I need 2 crores, right? This next question is why do you need 2 crores? All this would be connected back to your GTM, your progress, the team, the growth that you're looking at, right? So here in ask, right, there are 2 or 3 major things that you should look at, right? The first thing that you should talk about is how much money do you need, and usually raise money at least for 18 to 24 months, okay? Not less than that. Don't think that I'll only raise for 6 months, because a lot of times the fundraising process itself takes 6 to 9 months. So even if you want to take a follow-up round of funding, you'll be in a full-time job of just fundraising and again fundraising and again fundraising. You need a good amount of time to recover and run your company as well, right? So usually at least target for 18 to 24 months of fundraising, right? And always put more amount than what you need, right? Don't, let's say you do your financial modeling and it gets to 2 crores, don't put exactly 2 crores, because a lot of times you end up burning more money than what it is, because market is inefficient, system is inefficient, you pivot a lot, right? So always make sure that you have some best use cases and worst use cases. So when you do financial modeling, you also need to model what is the worst case scenario and best case scenario, not just the realistic scenario. So have that thing and talk about having a bit more runway than less runway, okay? But obviously don't ask for too much funding, because if you can't meet your goals, hit your milestones, or use your money, next round you're going to actually go have a down round, which is like your valuation will go lower than the previous round, which will actually mess you up further, right? And then the second thing what you need to ask is in terms of how do you are going to use the money, right? So a lot of investors would really want to understand, are you using this money to build more, or are you using this money to grow more? Okay, let me repeat that statement. Are you using this money to build more, or are you using this money to grow more? A lot of investors would be invested in growing rather than building. Because if you say that, hey, I need this money, but I want to build another feature, I wouldn't build it unless it's a very tech-oriented product that has high IP value, right? Or that technology building itself is be like, somebody's building Meta's competitor, somebody's building like, something amazing on blockchain, which is like not anybody's cup of tea. Then, people would invest into technology, because over there they're building tech and that has a longer life cycle. They know that. Rest of the companies, right, they're building it for growth. Where you say that if you give this money, I would spend my 40% on marketing, 30% on, let's say, sales, or like, let's say 20% on sales, 10% on product, 20% on hiring, right? You actually show them the breakup of how you're going to utilize their money. You don't have to go to the details, but at least give them a breakup of how they're actually going to do this, right? And third most important thing, right, when you do ask is, tell them about what are your future plans after this, right? Do you want to again go for future rounds of funding after 18 to 24 months? Or do you want to just stay bootstrapped, right? Or sorry, with just the round of funding? Or are you planning to have are you planning to have an exit plan, right? So all these things are actually things that as you go, you need to really start putting together. So if you actually start putting all these things together, right, what we did is not just cover this one, but so anyways, like, what I've covered is pretty much in terms of not just slides or pitching. I've covered it at a much broader level in terms of you understanding that a lot of pitfalls, if you can actually do it offline, right, your pitch is just an extended version of yours. A lot of you actually spend a lot of time trying to pitch or build a deck. That's because offline you haven't done a lot of things properly and you're looking for just shortcuts. But if you have followed a lot of things that I'm talking about, your pitch is like super easy to build, because you really know who your customer is, what is the problem, what is the solution. You can just take an half an hour, 1 hour and just type it out and say this is what it is. Rest is visually presenting it, right? So I think with this I would kind of close, right? So with that, I think I'm good to go. Yeah. So anything else or any questions or anything? Or yeah, please. No worries. Yeah. No. Go to market is essentially how you're planning to attack the market. That is where your go to market comes. It's not like it's a phase. Go to market is just a way of saying that at this stage I'm going to go this way. Now let's say you're hitting 1 crore. Till 1 crore you say my go to market is this. But now you have to really scale. Your go to market will change again. That is where read this book called Traction. That will really help you understand on how do you revisit your go to market again and again to do that part. So.
Sir, my question is like, you didn't mention about the valuation, like while raising the fund or asking for some fund,
Right.
like how can we, like, is it depend upon, like one expert told me that suppose you have 1 crore of revenue, you have to multiply with 7, this is your valuation.
Yeah.
And second way is like, suppose we have 10,000 customer and potential spend of one customer is 10,000, multiply that is your valuation.
I get what you say. So you want to understand how the valuation should be done, right? Actually, what I would recommend, I'll tell some initial parts, but I would definitely love Praveen to probably, if you can later take a 10-minute session, 15-minute session, right? He would give you exactly much in depth. Being an investment banker, they'll actually do valuation day in, day out, right? So I'll just give you a high level answer for that, right? So most of the startups, 0 to 3 years, don't have any revenues, or like, a lot of things are not in place to do valuation, right? So most of them almost start from like a 2 crore valuation, even if they're saying like I'll give you 10% for 20 lakhs, whatever it is, right? That is typically done based on some random number, what both of you are comfortable with. It's a negotiation. You can even say I'm valued 5 crores. If you can back it up, it works, right? So the first level of seed stage funding or early stage funding, right? A lot of times you can't come up with a formula to do valuation, right? And when you start getting slightly upper, or when you start looking at the types of things, right? There are like two types of things over there, right? One is discounted cash flows. You're actually giving revenues, right? Probably can actually show you some examples. So you can actually formulate a discounted cash flow where you project saying that these are my last 2-3 years revenues and this is my future revenues. Based on that, you can actually come up with a proper valuation formula, right? And the second way is multiples, right? Industry multiples. So industry multiples, the way it works is, if you're taking about similar companies, Ola has raised money at this multiple, Uber has raised at this multiple, then you're saying that we fall into similar category. My competitors are raising at similar multiples, so even I am valued, right? You can take it like a peer comparison. So every industry has comparables. Even Agri will have it. I don't know the exact numbers. Probably one of you can share. So that is like on an average what an industry guy values, saying that these are the multiples for this industry. So if you can actually find out what are the multiples for your space, your segments and all, you can, and then how big or how small is the multiple is a negotiation, right? You can start with the lowest, or you can say that I'm the best solution and I should be valued highly because you're going to get a lot more returns. Yeah, so it's a negotiation at the end of the day. Unless you hit 2-3 years of revenue, it's very difficult to put an actual number. Rest all is more about your previous round and showing them why your future and why you're valued this much. See, as long as you don't get a valuation number from external sources, right? It's difficult to call it a valuation, right? Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Grant will not form part of a value driver or a valuation driver.
Right.
Grant is just a shortfall of the cash flow what they are funding.
Somebody is just giving you, right? If your family member is they really love you and they're putting 10 lakhs in you, and you'll say, hey, my family member gave me 10 lakhs, give me a valuation of 20 crores. I would not give it because that's your family member. But imagine Matrix Partners is coming and putting money into you, or some angel investors putting money. That's an external guy validating you and saying that I think you're worth this much. So that becomes a baseline. It's like somebody else coming and telling you rather than you kind of telling that this is what it is. But I think it goes back to the kind of pitch, the way you present yourself. But like you rightly said, keep it short. Don't overload the other person. Build curiosity. You should ask for a second meeting. That person should ask for a third meeting. They should say, hey, I really like what you do. Let's sit and talk. That's when you draw them in and sell it, right? So thank you. Thanks for being a nice audience for me.